And I was so bored of
Hello. Hello.
Hey, Vera.
Hey. Wow. That is my, okay. Hi. Hi, Todd. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Good. Hey.
This one is of Muslim origin. A lot of different flowers make a bouquet. Here's one by Felix Adler. Familiar name, right? The freedom of thought is a sacred right of every individual man, and diversity will continue to increase with the progress, refinement, and differentiation of the human intellect. Oh, here's a good one by Albert Einstein. I didn't know he had a sense of humor, but everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Blessed are the weird people, poets, misfits, writers, mystics, painters, troubadours, for they teach us to see the world through different eyes. We could learn a lot from crayons. Some are sharp, some are pretty, some are dull, while others bright. Some have weird names, but they have all learned to live together in the same box.
Right, well, all I'm going to do now is invite Jennifer to come up and introduce our speaker today.
I'll do my best here. So I'm very excited about today. Hopefully you all will fall in love with this program like myself and my family has fallen in love with Stronger Together. But Stronger Together is a Durham-based nonprofit that teaches girls to stick together. No matter how different they are, girls are able to organically embrace our mission via 8 years of programming that focuses on elevated outcomes, positive mental health, anti-racism work, mentoring, literacy, and more. Stacey Donoghue will talk to us today about the innovation of this organization. Stacey has studied civil engineering, attended business school, designed shoes and purses, built and sold a property management business, played around with writing middle grade novels, built tree houses and chicken coops, and created oil portraits using only her hands. But she's newly, I would say, she's never run a nonprofit, but she's doing such a great job. I'll say she's doing it so well, you can't really tell that she's never done it until Stronger Together. She's excited to share more with us today in her latest adventures and perhaps her best one yet. So please help me in welcoming Stacey to the stage. Thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. an opportunity to meet with you all. Okay, so let me just ask a question. You're going to add me. I can say, that's why you want to walk around.
You can take this off.
Yeah, that's my thing. I move around. I'm
So
going to
this
whack
is-
that thing.
This is for the Zoom audience. That's for the audience here.
Okay. So it's okay if I move around with this. That was my question. Okay. Can you hear me? Are we good? All right. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. This is super cool. I know Jennifer because her daughter Zay is in our program. She's about to finish the 7th grade, and she came into our program at the beginning of 5th grade. So she's been there about 3 years. But I thought that today, what might be interesting to you is to learn a little bit, because a question I often get is, how did you get into this? How did Stronger Together get started? And what does your program do? And then for people in the community who might be interested in trying to help us out, how can that look as well? So that's kind of the ground I was hoping we might be able to cover. So first of all, Stronger Together is a really young program. We were, I guess, conceptualized in 2016, and in 2017, that's when we formally became a 501c3 nonprofit based out of Durham. And people often ask, what happened in 2016 to get this show on the road? And there's a nice article that's on our website, on our press page, that Durham Magazine did about us in 2018 in the women's issue that kind of takes you through that story. But when I talk to people about it, I describe it as more of a trifecta of events. Stronger Together was co-founded by myself and Vashana Ramia, who's an oncologist here in the area. And she's also my bestie. And I would say we had a couple of experiences that took us down this path. The first was just a silly little thing. We have a mutual friend who at that time had a daughter who was in the 1st grade. And one day, the 3 of us were together, Vashana, and her name is Shraddha. So Shraddha, Vashana, and myself were together. And she said, let me tell you about this birthday card that my daughter got, my 1st grade daughter. And so she tells us that Samia, her daughter, had received a birthday card that was a beautiful, sparkly card on the outside. But when you opened it up on the inside, there was a message from the child who gave it to her. And it said, I don't like you, but happy birthday anyway. And, that really struck us, that little kids that were 6, maybe 7 years old, little girls, could be that comfortable already with being that unkind to one another. So we just sort of tabled that, and time went on, and we got to this point in 2016 where, of course, race-based hate crimes are prolific, as we know, but there was a real spike. I don't know if you remember, we had about a 6-week time frame in there where it was prolific in the news, just things that were happening all over the country. And one thing that was among those lists of things, and thankfully got buried, I guess, was here in Durham. And I know we're in Chapel Hill, okay? But in Durham, just outside of North Carolina Central University on Main Street, you might be familiar with JC's Kitchen. It's just a small restaurant on the corner, and they have a parking lot with a brick wall. And during this period of time, someone decided to spray paint some really ugly words on that brick wall. Well, Vashana and I, we were mortified that this had happened in our community. And so we called up the owner of the restaurant, Miss Phyllis, and we said, we're sorry that this has happened, and and we want to support you however we can. So we started going to that restaurant. We started inviting people that we knew to come there, and we got to know Miss Phyllis. And one of the things over time, after several months, that really began to strike us was the fact that she could have handled that situation Think about it in any number of ways. She could have been embarrassed. She could have sort of withdrawn. She could have been angry. There were so many ways that she might have responded. But instead, she was doing things like organizing the community to have a band in the parking lot and giving paintbrushes to kids. And, if you drive by there right now, you'll see, some images that are on that same wall that were painted, many of them by kids, with some local artists out there to help them, put this here and put that there. So we asked ourselves, what is it that really helped her to respond to such a negative situation in such a positive way? And then it struck us. Every morning when we go in there and we'd be having breakfast, what we would see is that Miss Phyllis had this squad of girlfriends that would bebop in there in the morning, and you could just see her. She'd just light up. She'd just light up. And you could see after a period of time, this is a network of women that she's really depending on. So when I tell you it was a trifecta of events, other than those couple of things, what also brought us to the place where Stronger Together came into being was that we said, wow, it feels like we as a society are getting more and more comfortable with accepting things that are negative, right? So if you already have a situation with women where we as girls and women we can be snarky, judgmental, manipulative, we can gossip, we can, there's a lot of mean-spirited antics that can go on between girls and women, stereotypically, whether it's true or not. That's the stereotype that we have, right? And so we looked at all of that, and that is when we said, you know what? We need to create something where we start young enough with the girls in our community to instill a change in mindset. And to do that, we felt like it was really important that we stick with the girls for a long time for a number of reasons. Yes, it's a change in mindset, and that often takes a long time to happen. There's many programs for girls that are here in our community, and they're wonderful programs, but girls are a part of them for a year, maybe 2 years. We felt like if we really wanted girls to understand the value of networking, the value of supporting one another, that we needed to give it that time, and pair that with the fact that, especially for many of the girls in our program, there's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot of, they change schools. Maybe they're evicted. They change schools. They have family dynamics. Friends are constantly changing, and we wanted to be something they could count on. And so for that reason, we designed the program such that they come in as fifth graders and they stay with us with their same group of 10 or 12 girls until they graduate from high school. So that is our story and how we came to be. So we're only, as I said, 6 years old now. And so probably your next question is, well, that sounds great, but what are you actually doing with these kids? What are they up to? Logistically, what's happening is the kids get together every 4 to 6 weeks. It might be just with the girls who are in their groups. It might be with all of the girls that are in the entire program. But when they get together, there's any number of things they might be doing. They are learning about their community because we're putting a focus on community service learning. We've had kids that have hosted victims of hurricanes. We've made bracelets for Durham Rescue Mission. We've made cards for sick children. I mean, just all kinds of things that we're trying to do to help them understand more about the opportunities to give within their communities. But we're also doing a good bit of work in the way of mentoring and trying to elevate outcomes for the kids and introduce them to possibilities. I should backtrack for a second and say this. you might ask, how do kids come into our program? How do they become a part of Stronger Together? They're nominated to our program by school counselors. And when a school counselor says to us, what's the criteria for bringing kids in? We basically say, you know, although we think all of our kids are brilliant and amazing, but when we go to a school counselor, we don't say, give us your straight A students. Give us the kids that are the sports standouts. Give us the kids that are in all the performances. We want the kids who are going to be most, be able to benefit the most from our programming. And so, you know, we make sure that the counselors understand the things that we do, and that's how they nominate girls to our program. So having said that, one of the other things that we're trying to do from a mentoring and an extracurricular learning perspective is introduce the girls to any number of community leaders. These girls have met astronauts, they've met the governor's chief of staff, they've met Olympians and World Cup soccer coaches. And they're learning more and more about our own city council members and the mayor. And they've just met all kinds of different people. So that is hopefully opening their minds to some possibilities that they have for themselves. But in addition to that, to take that a step further, we have a part of our program that's called Villagers. And it's a part of our program that we just finished a pilot. Many of the girls in our program get on a bus, go to school, come home on the bus, and that's their day. Right? They're not doing all of the classes and the lessons and the camps. And so one of the things that we've been piloting is supporting the girls from a financial perspective. Is if there's activities they want to do, we want to remove all the boundaries to them being able to do that. So we want to take care of what it costs for them to do that. If there's issues with not having technology at home or speaking English for registrations and things like that, we take care of that. If it's an issue with transportation and getting the girl to the activity, we're trying to remove that boundary as well. So we just finished our first pilot with that, which is great. And now we're just trying to continue to grow that piece of our program so that we can give the girls those opportunities. Launch is another part of our program where we're trying to teach the girls about higher education options. What are the options? What's an associate's degree? What's a trade school? What's a state-supported school versus a private college versus an HBCU? What do all these terms mean? Many of the girls don't know a lot of that. And so Launch is a program where we're trying to introduce them to all of those things, take them on campus tours, and just really drill down on scholarships. What are the scholarships that might be available to them, and how does it work? How do you apply? So Launch is another way that we're working to try and help the kids elevate outcomes. Good gracious. We do a lot of work with anti-racism. We have a part of our program that's called YARD, Youth Anti-Racism Discussions. Briefly, the first couple of years, we focused on Black Lives Matter and looking at racial inequity through the lens of current events, personal experience, arts and culture, things like that. We broadened out a little bit and started looking at other communities that experience inequities. And now we're looking at, we're doing some systemic work. This year, we're going to be, we have a focus on the criminal justice system, racial inequities within that system. And then next year, we'll be looking at social democracy. So gerrymandering and voting rights and redistricting and all that. So certainly that's a big part of our program. Positive mental health. Certainly with COVID, we saw some issues with our kids in terms of anxiety, depression, withdrawal, even through Zoom. We know our kids really well, and we could see these things happening. So we surveyed them to get a real sense for how they were feeling. And because of all that, we started a part of our program that tries to help them with their self-confidence, their self-esteem. Right now, we're broadening that part of our program to include And this goes to the heart of our mission, but to include helping the girls with their interactions with other girls, right? And just making those the best that they can be. Let's see, what else do we have going? Durham Book Club. I know we have a writer in here, and we probably have some readers. But Durham Book Club is for all middle grade students, 5th through 8th grade students in Durham. It's open to any kids. And basically, it's run by students that represent many different schools. And those students, it's really interesting to see how they operate because they love books so much. So every year they get together and they come up with this humongous list of about 100 books that they just love and they can't live without. And they have to narrow it down to 4 books that will be read by everyone in the book club in April, May, June, and July. Okay. Yeah, you don't want to be in those meetings. Anyway. But yeah, they do that and they're in the middle of it right now. And for every book that we're reading this season, for example, the kids are meeting the authors. We've been meeting one author in person and the other 3 they'll meet through Zoom. And it's just really taken off. So we're excited to do that because we have waiting lists for all of our groups that we have in our program. And this is a way that we can open it up to the entire community and continue doing what we really love doing, which is taking these kids and connecting them with other students who are not in their schools and their neighborhoods and their regular orbits. And that helps us with helping the kids to embrace the differences among all of them. So with Durham Book Club, that's just an extension of that work that we're doing. Wow. I feel like probably from a programming perspective, I must be forgetting something. We do a summer camp every year for the girls in our program. We are working on a leadership development camp that would be for the community at large for paid participants. That's a PS too. Everything for the girls in our program who've been nominated is free. So we don't ask our families for any money. But we are trying to develop a leadership development camp for middle grade students so that they can, so that we would see income from that, but we can also take the things that we've learned in camp and hopefully share that. We've been doing camp for 6 years now. Yeah. So I think that is pretty much, it gives you a flavor of what we've been up to for 6 years. And then I guess just to wrap it up, and unless you all have questions, but the ways that obviously the community is a great help to us. Donations, of course, are wonderful, but beyond that, we are always on the lookout for group leaders. These are people that would co-lead a group of 10 or 12 girls and help to coordinate some of those weekend activities every 4 to 6 weeks. With the villagers, I mentioned the extracurricular learning. If you were ever interested in like a 5-month stint, because we don't ask you to be a mentor for a girl forever. It's about 5 months, and basically you're assigned to a girl and you get to understand what she's interested in and research activities for her and things like that. But yeah, there's and sometimes we have opportunities for camp counselors where we have some vacancies where we might be able to use someone, but certainly some I think cool opportunities to dive in and hopefully something for everyone. But I've talked a lot. What questions do you all have? Any questions about anything?
So do is formal question.
Okay. Uh-huh. Gotcha. So I put this back, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure how I do it.
All right. I'm just going to hold it. So our society is a all volunteer organization. We receive no money from any other organization, and we survive due to your commitment to our common goals. So we passed the baskets, and thank you in advance for your generous donations. So we will have, with the gracious approval of our speaker, a question and answer session. Please raise your hand, wait for the microphone, and ask one question at a time. Let everyone get a chance, and we'll go around the room. So I'm going to hand this mic back to Stacey.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Fred.
There we go. So I see two. I'll start because I'm right here. Jan.
Hi. You partially answered some of this with your last remarks, but I just wondered organizationally, how do you operate? Do you have a board? Do you have materials for the group leaders to use for the group's ideas and stuff? Just what goes into the process?
Okay, yeah, definitely. We do have a board. We have a working board. Administratively, the way we're organized, we have volunteers, which is comprised of group leaders and also leaders who manage the high school students. We call them our youth representative team. So those folks, in conjunction with our working board, it's probably about 30 or so people altogether, comprises what we call our leadership team. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Oh, and do we have, the second part of your question was, do we have materials or things that we share with people who might be interested? Yeah. With the group leaders, we usually have a quarterly information session with Zoom, where we try and share more about that position and what's involved. And again, it's a volunteer position, but we do work really hard to pay, as our budget will allow, a gratitude stipend to our group leaders to say thank you. But we also have a group leader handbook, which has like a bazillion links on it that is hopefully a great resource to help our group leaders as well. Does that help answer? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I've got the mic. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm Linda Patterson. I'm curious about the summer camp. Is this an overnight camp?
The summer camp is not an overnight camp, but don't say that too loud if Zay is on the Zoom, because then she'll raise that up as a possibility with the other campers, and that'll be a big topic of discussion. No, it's a Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. camp. And Durham Academy has always been gracious enough every year to allow us to use their campus for our camp. And I should also say that they're also a great partner in that they help us with using buses when we need help with transportation and we have larger groups. So we have many, many great partners in the community. I could stand up here a long time and talk about them, but they're one who particularly helps us with summer camp.
Yeah, I'm Hugh. So it sounds like a very worthwhile program. I'm wondering what's the age range and how many kids you got in the program?
Okay, Hugh, we have the kids are nominated as rising fifth graders. So right now in the spring, we just wrapped up nominations for our incoming group of kids who will become official. They'll start their activities in the fall of their fifth grade year. And those kids, like I said, they stay with us 8 years until they graduate from high school. So our oldest group of kids now that are in the program started with us when they were 9 or 10 years old, and now they're 16, 15. Yeah. So
how many total?
Oh, and how many kids do we have? We have about 100 kids.
100 kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to relay a comment from one of our Zoom listeners. Zainab says, you can also become a youth representative after you graduate high school, which is like a leader of each group, and help support Stronger Together even after you've finished the program.
Oh, I love Zay is there, so I've got to be so careful what I'm saying. That's good to know. Thank you, Zay. And exactly, she's exactly right. So youth representatives we have probably 9 high schools in the Durham community where bunches of kids will put in applications to be a youth rep for our program. And we sort of have to whittle that down to about 25 of those kids. And then they support kids who are in the younger groups. So that's what the youth representatives do. But to Zay's point, many times after they graduate from high school, summer camp is an example. Our camp coordinator this summer is a youth rep who's gone off to college, and she's been with us the last 2 summers as a high school student, and now she knows what she's doing. So she's going to coordinate camp for us and get paid for it. So yeah, that's exactly right. We have one youth rep who was with us in 11th and 12th grade and went to school at Barnard, which is a women's college, part of Columbia. And she just in the last couple of months finished her thesis project, which was about Stronger Together. So that was, of course, near and dear to my heart. And, but yeah, we once I tell the kids all the time, I say, once you're with us, you're our family forever now. We're going to try and support you however we can. And that seems to ring true to Zay's point. See, she's noticing, and she's only in the 7th grade. So she's paying attention.
Jennifer.
So this is really not a question. It's a shameless plug. So when Zainab was nominated, it was right at the time, right before the pandemic started. So we were kind of locked in our homes, trying to figure out what we're going to do. And we had just a lot of family issues. So most of y'all know, with my husband being sick, we lost our son at that time too. So we've had a lot going on. So I was so grateful for 2 women who at the time I had no idea who they were, showing up at my house, dropping off books for my daughter, keeping her engaged. She loves to read. She's an excellent reader. But there was something that she could look forward to. It was something that she could depend on. And it was something that really impacted our lives in a positive way. So I am eternally grateful to Stronger Together for all that they've done for us, and everything that they will continue to do for us. But I can definitely say that my daughter has benefited. It is good that girls are nominated. I'm so excited about that, but it does cause a little jealousy in the community because her friends are like, well, you're doing this, you're doing that. You know, she's gone kayaking. She's done trips where they've gone to powwows. They have had things where they've gone together and just learned about different cultures. And so those things kind of get filtered back to the community through conversations. And so the questions become, well, how did you get into that? How did you get that? Where are you going? You know, so it's important. It's an important program, an important organization. And of course, the more that the girls go through it, we will see in the community how much more important it is for more of these things to happen and more of these types of programs to happen to support all the girls in the community. So, but I'll stop my shameless plug.
Jennifer, thank you. And I'll just say our growth is really, we've been very deliberate. That's the reason I'm telling you, we have 100 kids in our program and not 1,000, because we've tried to be very certain that we are capable of supporting the kids financially and also from a leadership perspective. We want to just give them a quality experience. And we're going to grow as all of that grows with us. But to your point, Jennifer, I know about all the kids that are saying, what about us? And so that's why in the last couple of years, we've implemented a part of our program where if we're doing an activity and it's not like a super expensive activity, we always tell the kids, you can bring a friend, bring somebody with you. And so that's our way of trying to double our capacity if we can.
We have a list of questions coming up. So.
Okay.
I'm dying to know what 4 books you read last year.
Oh, okay. Well, they're reading. I can tell you the books they're reading right now. Okay. So right now, this month, they're reading a book called The Parker Inheritance. Do you know a lot about middle grade novels? Maybe. Okay. So they're reading The Parker Inheritance, and oh my gosh, Stephanie Mulligan would be so mad at me if I can't name all 4 of these. They just got through reading another one called The Best at It.
Are these young adult
These are
novels?
5th through 8th grade. That's where we're really focused with the kids that are a part of Durham Book Club. And then there's 2 more. Don't tell her. She's the leader of that program. She was a former librarian, and she has 2 little kids now. And so she's running that part of our program. And it is really something. Let me tell you, the kids right now for the Parker Inheritance, they proactively got together with the head of the Durham Museum of History, and they've put together a whole a puzzle that they're going to be doing with their peers all month. And it's pretty snazzy what they've come up with. So yeah, some good books.
There was another Zoom follow-up to an answer to a question that was asked earlier. And I think you've pretty much addressed this already. But the question was, you mentioned a waiting list. Can you say more about it?
Yes. So here's what generally happens. In fact, I've just experienced this the last couple of months as we've been getting nominations for our new group of girls. Counselors will say, wait, I know you told me that you're asking for 1 nominee, but I have 5 girls that I have in mind for this. And we have to say, can you give us the prioritized list of those girls? And so they'll give us all 5 names, and, and that's how our waiting list tends to form. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Gretchen. Has word of your program gone out beyond the Durham area? Is there a chance other chapters will form elsewhere?
Thanks for that question, Gretchen. Yeah, we get calls. We get calls from other areas, Chapel Hill and Raleigh, asking us if we're there, for sure. And as we have retreats and we talk with our board and our leadership team about vision and things like that, again, there's a whole lot of deliberation in what we do and taking our time and make sure that we're doing it right. And what we have talked about from a vision perspective is taking our time and building this program out so that we know what we're doing. And at that point, looking at, introducing it to being able to almost package it or franchise it, I guess, and offer it to other areas.
Maura?
Just out of curiosity, have you had very many girls at all who start the program and then choose not to stay with it? Because it sounds like such a great program.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you asked that question, because oddly enough, it's the opposite in the most polar of ways. These kids, the odds that all of them are going to stay in Durham and complete their schooling is 0, right? So, I can give you some examples in our oldest group of kids who I was mentioning to you, and they call themselves the founders. So one of those girls had been in our program for about 7 months, and her mom, who was a single mom, said, we're going to be moving to Atlanta in 2 days. And so she was distraught. And she immediately let us know that this was happening. And she said, I can't believe it. I love this program. My mom says we're leaving. We got everybody in her group together. It was amazing. It was right during the holiday season. It was freezing cold. We got together at a McDonald's somewhere in Durham. And she said, I want to keep doing this. And immediately we thought about, well, you know what? Our program is about teaching girls to stick together no matter how different they are. And part of that difference includes where you are. So we looked at her and we said, hey, if you're going to be committed to us from a long distance, you can rest assured we will be committed to you. Now that child, it's 5 years later, and she just went to the mountains on a milestone trip with her group. She's going to be here this summer on summer camp as a counselor. She is on every Zoom that we have that same situation with another child who moved to Boston. She stays with us regularly. Children that have moved to Fuquay-Varina, to Cary, you'll see them. You'll see the kids took a trip yesterday and went on a day-long trip to the zoo. And one dad got off his shift as a nurse and brought his daughter from Burlington to Durham. She got on a bus, went back out to the zoo. Dad came back at the end of the day, picked her up.
Obviously, you need some buy-in from the parents. Do you just show up at the door with books, or do you must contact the parents in advance?
That's a great question too. We when school counselors nominate the girls to our program, they're equipped enough to be able to start having that conversation with parents, and then we follow it up with Zooms, with infographics, with phone calls, whatever it takes, so that they understand. Because parents are going to be very concerned about things like, does this cost money? We have one car and we use it for both of our jobs or one of our jobs. How is my child going to get to this thing? How often does this happen on Thursday nights? We can't, so you have to talk parents through the logistics of it, which is it's free. We'll help you get there, and it's on weekends. And when they hear that, they feel better.
Linda?
How many schools does your program cover? And like how many? So it would be middle schools and then high schools?
We are in almost 30 elementary, middle, and high schools, because those fifth graders, many of them are in elementary schools. Mm-hmm. And then of course, middle schools and high schools. Yeah, almost 30 are represented out of those 100 kids. And that's intentional. This new group that's coming in, there's 12 kids that are coming in. They are from 11 different schools. Okay, we're not really focused on pockets, 3 or 4 pockets. That defeats our purpose of embracing differences. So we come from all over the place.
So that's a pretty extensive program. So it was you get your funding to support you.
Yes, it's not confidential at all. So to this point, Hugh, we've gotten our funding from grants and corporate grants that come from foundations like Triangle Community Foundation or the Mary Duke Biddle Foundation. But we've also gotten grants, corporate grants, Blue Cross Blue Shield, UCB, Pfizer. All of those folks have supported us with grant money. But I'll tell you the truth, the community has been amazing. We do around Giving Tuesday, that fourth quarter, we usually have, a real push, a real fundraiser. And every time we set a goal for ourselves, and we feel pretty good about our goals, but every time the community has surpassed what we've asked for. So, but it's a great question, because for any of you out there that are financial people, one of the things now, we've reached that point in our evolution of our nonprofit that we know that we need to diversify our revenue stream. So we've developed these different pieces of our programming, and we know that some of them are such that we could see a revenue income from those pieces of our program, like that leadership development camp I mentioned to you. So we also know that, the development of a of a more extensive business plan could be meaningful to some donors to be able to see that. And we also know that there's some collaborative efforts with other nonprofits that would allow us to apply for grants with a partnership that we would maybe not be able to get on our own. So we have some work to do to sort of expand how we're bringing our money in. But today, that's how we are funded.
I'm actually going back with a little bit of a follow-up to a question of Amy's. I can remember back in the dark ages in my high school years, I had a friend whose family was pretty non-supportive. And had she been able to be nominated for this, there's no way her parents would have ever agreed to it. Do you ever come across parents that you just can't get through to, or not so far?
Yes, the short answer is yes. I'm thinking of one example of a child whose parents were divorced. And so dad and stepmom are super excited about Stronger Together. The child is still a part of our program, but they told me right off the bat, they said, listen, any weekends that she's going to be with her mom, she's not coming to your program because there's a lot of things, that you all are looking at that the mom would not be supportive of. And so yeah, that happens. Yeah.
Any other questions for our speaker? Dorothy?
So do you have a location, like a hub location? And also, how many paid staff do you have?
Oh, I love these questions so much. We live out of a PO box, basically. We're nomads, and we do. I mean, Jennifer can attest to this. All of our programming takes us all over the place. So we're all over Durham and the surrounding community. We did for a time. We had space in downtown Durham. It was one of those co-working kind of spaces, and what we found after having that for about a year was that our groups are so darn busy running around, doing activities everywhere that it wasn't making sense for us to have that. So, and in terms of a paid staff, no, I mean, we don't. It's a working board. It's like I said, we do try to give the group leaders a gratitude stipend every quarter if we can afford it. But I'm here to tell you that we've probably been able to pay our group leaders in a good year about $1,000 during that year. So we don't have paid staff. I've never been paid. But that is, I tell our leadership team, it's like we've crossed a mountain the first 6 years, and now we got this big stream in front of us, and we gotta cross over the stream and start going up the next part of our nonprofit evolution cycle. And to do that, we really need to be bringing in a paid staff, because programming wise, we've grown to the point that it's a lot for people to do. Without being paid. So
I have a question. Could you talk a little bit about your personal motivation in getting into this and getting started with it, in terms of what drove you to do what you're doing?
Gosh. Well, I don't know. I shared that story at the beginning, Fred, and I felt, and I have a daughter who is 14, and she is part of the program, and she's buddies with Zay. And I felt that it was, we as women and girls, we're not doing ourselves any favors if we don't figure out how to rise above that spirit that we've historically had with one another. The World Economic Forum says that the United States, where we are right now, at the pace we've been at, is going to take another 208 years for women to be paid and promoted and treated the same as men are. 208 years. And I mean, we've got to do something. Us girls, we've got to do something. And the first part of that, I think, is just like I said, it goes back, Fred, to that mindset of, you know what, you're a woman. I've got to know who you are, what you're interested in, what your goals are, and I've got to be a piece of helping you to get there. And no matter where we are, if we're in a coffee shop, we just all need to be making eye contact with each other. We got each other. We're part of a club, right? And so when you ask me what's my motivation, it's to change that mindset with girls and women and help us to help ourselves.
Great, thank you.
We have a Zoom question from Anne. I think you mentioned volunteer leaders or mentors. Please tell if there are other kinds of volunteer opportunities.
Okay. Trying to think through all of our many different things that we have. Well, other than the group leaders and that I mentioned already, and the mentors that we are looking for the Villagers program, which is the extracurricular learning. The other thing I might mention is that we're always looking for anyone who has something to speak to the girls about. Okay. Maybe it's a business that you've had for 20 or 30 years. How did you start that business? Or maybe you know a lot about banking, but you could talk to young people in such a way that you can get them thinking about and understanding things like credit and debit and, all of those. How do you buy a house? I mean, people that would be interested in speaking to us is certainly another way that you can help us. Let me keep thinking, Anne. I know there's more.
The program is obviously having a big effect on girls, and it kind of speaks to my an earlier life that I had envisioned for myself in sociology. So I'm wondering if you have any studies ongoing about where the girls are when they start and where they are when they finish in sociology terms.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things, like I mentioned, this is not my background, nonprofit work. So one of the things in the last 2 or 3 years, more recently, that we as a program have had to wrap our heads around is that notion of evaluation and being able to articulate your impact. So we've done some of that. We started out the first 3 years with every summer, parents and guardians, as well as the kids, would do an extensive survey, and we would use, all of that information. When kids are nominated to our program, we'll ask them questions like, are your friends a lot like you? Do you feel like you can trust your friends? Is it easy for you to make friends? We'll ask them that day one. Okay. And so some of those things are being repeated, especially with our positive mental health initiatives that we've got, where we're asking some of those same kinds of questions. But we just sent out a survey. I think probably Zay has seen it or filled it out, but we just sent out something about, we are trying to drill down on that. When there's conflict with your friends, how are you handling that? Is it this way or this way or this way? And so we will get that information from the girls, and then we will take them through a series of 5 workshops that are really trying to help them understand more about positive interactions with their friends, or how to handle bullies or whatever. And then we'll revisit that at the end and see, did we have the impact that we were hoping for as a result of that? So are we pros at that? No, I think we're still learning, if I'm really transparent with you. And we got some funding to help us just with evaluations and working with a consultant. So I think we're getting better at it, and I think we're on the right track. How's that?
So can I sort of follow up and ask, you said when girls are nominated by a high school counselor to come to your program, do they undergo sort of a screening by folks in your group before they're accepted, or how does that work?
They don't, and they're nominated by their elementary school counselor.
Sorry.
Yeah. So
Elementary
they're in the 4th grade at the time they're nominated. So those counselors are the ones who are nominating them. That reminds me of some moments. I've had a couple of moments where counselors have come back and said, hey, this sounds like a great program, and I really want to nominate this child, but I'm going to be honest with you and say, she's caused a lot of problems. Okay. I mean, we've had some issues. And I think a program like this could help her, but I just want you to know, would you prefer, that I go on to our second nominee? And that's the kind of thing as leaders, that when that first happened, we had a conversation about restorative justice and that whole thing. And we said, absolutely, we want that kid. And so we don't have a screening kind of thing we do. If the counselors nominate the kids, then we trust those counselors. And if they ask us questions like that, sometimes we have to talk about it and figure it out. But in those instances, that's been our answer. We want those kids to be a part of us.
On the other side of the equation, with the people running, say, the social justice or racial justice type programs, or the positive mental health program, how do you identify and obtain people qualified or able to do that effectively?
Yeah. By accident. I don't know. Yeah. For instance, Durham Book Club, Stephanie, who I mentioned, a board member brought us to Stephanie, and she's been amazing for us for a couple of years. Youth anti-racism discussion. Hey, Anne, if you're still on there, you can help us spread the word on this one. We had an amazing leader for our anti-racism initiative for 2 years. She was a graduate of UNC. She studied African diaspora and music. And she, after 2 years of doing an incredible job leading that part of our program, she went off and had to get a job on Broadway. And now she's singing the lead role in Jesus Christ Superstar. So we had to say bye to Faith Jones, but we are actually, since she left us, we've been looking for someone to take her place to lead that part of our program. And basically what that entails is about every 2 to 3 months, a session with the girls, which right now we're handling it internally, but I'm positive somebody could do a better job. So, was there another part to your question?
That was basically
that was it. Okay.
Yeah. Just how do you identify good people?
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions for our speaker? Who's got hands up? Raise your hand so I can see.
How many groups do you have it broken down into? And is it more like the youngest ones in one group and in the middle, and you have about 100? So how many groups and how do you break them up?
Okay, so we have 6, soon to be 7 groups of girls. Each one with 10 to 12 girls. And then we have about 25 youth reps, and those high school students are divided between those 6 or 7 groups to provide support for them. Yeah. So every group of girls is supported by 2 group leaders and some high school students.
Right. Any others? At the risk of wearing our speaker out. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having
program.
me.
Thank you. All right. I feel, man, I got 2 mics now. Thank you all for thank you, Stacey, for a great program. And it's time now for announcements. Do we have any announcements from the floor? I see a couple.
Do not come here next Sunday. We will not be here. The next 2 Sundays are Zoom only meetings. Next Sunday, our fearless leader is going to be giving us a talk. and then leading a discussion based on a book he read recently. Fred, did you want to say the name of it?
I'd like to get it right before I do that, but it's basically, I wasn't prepared to do this, but it's basically about The Death of Expertise is the name of the book. And it's about how our society has been affected by both in the political spectrum as well as we'll call it social justice kind of spectrum, by the amount of stuff out there that's just not true. And so we're going to talk about that. And AI relates into it as well, because we see in the future that will probably be a significant burden on us to figure out what's real and what's not.
So after the reality check next Sunday, we have another Zoom on the 18th. And then on the 25th of June, we will meet back here again. And Amy will be hosting our speaker that day. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. A little while ago, someone reminded me that it's time to start thinking about baseball.
Thank you, Mike. I'm sure we'll hear more from you about that. Jennifer.
Just quickly, remember Change for Change. IFC is the Change for Change organization for this quarter, and it is the first Sunday. So we're collecting for IFC as well. So just a reminder, any extra change you have, there is a jar right there. Please donate and thank you.
Okay. And I have an announcement also. The announcement is next week, after our regular meeting, we will have a board meeting. Our board meetings are open to everyone, members, non-members, anybody wanders in off the street. You're welcome to come and join us. It'll be an especially important board meeting because we're going to select delegates for the American Ethical Union Convention coming up. And we will discuss some issues related to our interaction with the American Ethical Union. So feel free to join us.
I just wanted to say thanks for people who brought in groceries today to serve the IFC. I hope we can get back into much more participation.
Okay. Any other announcements? Maura, would you take care of it? All right. Well, I do believe the last major remaining item on our schedule is closing words. So we'll go. Oh, I'll just hand you the mic, which might be easier.
Thank you.
This is a poem called Unity Amidst Diversity. Lo, the world is a symphony, and to each person their own part in this musical arrangement of harmony, more simply, life on a chart. Yet this symphony has something lacking. A variety of instruments is surely required. Thus, the conductor obtains his backing. The movement of music is hastily acquired. And the orchestra plays on through the night, deeply moving the crowd in such awe as the vast ensemble proceeds in might. So it is, in unity, not a single flaw. For it is our humble prospect, solidarity in the human core, nothing less, nothing more. Yeah, this is tricky, isn't it?
It's hard to get in there. All right. Well, thank you all. I would like to thank our greeters today, Jean and Rick Shaw. I'd like to thank Linda Patterson for opening closing words. And Stacey, Donoghue, thank you very much for an exciting and great program. Finally, Amy Piersma is setting out refreshments. So we will have refreshments. Feel free to stay and join us. Our meeting is over, but our fellowship continues. Please give a warm greeting and a nod and a smile to the person next to you. Due to the pandemic, stay apart a little bit. And if you are going to join us for refreshments, I suggest washing your hands, especially if you've touched the COVID stick right here, so that we don't transmit any diseases. So thank you very much. And that's it.